As Lisa said, my name is Niesha McCoy, and I'm here, and I'm just here to share my story. Honestly, I never would have thought this would happen until it did. But we were part of for 14 years, and until it did, and it shakes something inside of me. We were part of for 14 years, my partner and I were part of our community. But on May 24th, 2024, all of that changed in a single afternoon when we were evicted. For many, an eviction is a financial crisis. For neighbors with disabilities, it is a medical catastrophe. See, I use a wheelchair, but I'm also a college senior studying marketing as well as a social justice advocate.
Amen.
My partner, who also has a disability, is an aspiring photographer and a man of immense resilience. But no one is immune to the strain of being forced onto the street in the summer heat. When the eviction happened, people I knew did everything they could to help. They stepped up immediately to help us move most of our things, most of our belongings into storage. But a lifetime of belongings cannot be moved by a few hands in a single afternoon. That very day, his first medical emergency happened precisely because he was forced to stand guard over on the asphalt in the summer heat, acting as a human shield over our remaining things. His initial collapse triggered a terrifying medical crisis that cascaded into 2 more medical visits, into not 1 but 2 ER visits in 48 hours. But the human cost went even deeper than physical collapse. While he was in the emergency room, thieves targeted the belongings he had just been guarding. They stole some of his photography equipment and some of his personal items. They were his livelihood, his camera, the sidewalk, the camera, his creative outlet, and his passion. The sidewalk strips you down systematically. You lose your safety, then you're on the brink of losing your house, and then you lose the few things that you have left to your name. But we were not passive in this crisis. When I filed for my first day of eviction, it was because we were already in the process of trying to move. We knew our situation was precarious, and we were doing everything in our power to do it on our own terms. I filed for a second stay of eviction for my own medical reasons. For my own medical reasons. I had a major procedure scheduled for the end of May in 2024. I even had 2 medical specialists attached to the hardship and eviction costs. But even with the medical procedure and 2 medical hardship letters, my request was denied. We were forced onto the street, out of our home, just 1 week before my procedure. I did the work to save our home and stay stable. I applied for emergency housing assistance from a local church right around the corner from our home. But their funding cap was $500. When we were displaced to a hotel in Cockeysville, I applied for another church, but they could only offer $1,000 in 2 separate payments. Even when charity is willing to step up, these funds quickly dry up because they are fighting a fire with a cup of water. When we saw financial assistance for our hotel stay, I was told by a worker, point blank, that I could not stay in a shelter because of my disability. There is some truth to that. Most shelters lack the medical infrastructure, reliable power for life-sustaining equipment, and basic accessibility. The safety net is effectively closed to us. At one point, it was suggested that I move into an assisted living facility. That suggestion was fundamentally wrong and deeply inappropriate. Care in a state-run facility takes 90% of my disability benefits and leaves me with $30 a month. Forced institutionalization is a civil rights value, not a housing policy. It is much cheaper for a Baltimore County to keep a person in their home than to pay for an ambulance, an ER visit, or a taxpayer-funded institutional bed. I am calling on the candidates to commit to two specific reforms. First, realistic rental assistance. We must establish an emergency housing assistance fund that reflects the current housing, real world current. Let me start off on that one. We must establish an emergency housing fund that reflects the current real-world rental market in Baltimore County. A $500 or $1,000 cap does nothing when the average rent exceeds $1,500. Assistance must meet reality. If we had access for a fund that scales to the local market, our temporary financial gap would have been bridged and we would likely have not been evicted. Second, trigger case management. We are both on disability. My partner and I are both on disability waivers. Second, trigger-based case management. We need to bridge the gap between courts and social services. We must implement a system with a failure to pay rent court filing for any resident currently on a disability waiver automatically triggers an immediate alert and proactive outreach in Baltimore County's coordinated services entry system. If this trigger existed in 2024, a case worker would have knocked on my door weeks before the sheriff did, and my partner would never been hospitalized, and his work and his life's work would never have been stolen. Housing stability is a human right. Thank you.
Yes.